Good afternoon. You're watching Up to Data, a retail news chat show in which we discuss topics ranging from news, business, digital transformation, technology, data, and so much more. And on today's episode, we have Halima Jumani, the director at Kibsons. Thanks so much for joining us, Halima.
Thank you very much for having me here.
First things first, Halima, how are you? How is Kibsons doing? How has 2021 been so far?
All I can say is one word: grateful. I think it's been busy. Ramadan was busy for everyone, but our industry in particular is always, regardless of whether we are now in e-commerce, in the past, it's always been busy because fruits and vegetables are, kind of the sales go up during Ramadan anyway. And then we were, I think too grateful and giving in coming up with this Ramadan promotion, which put us to another level of sales and challenge, which we're very happy about. I hope the consumers benefited from that. So it kept us genuinely busy, apart from our other work that goes on behind the scenes.
So what is the other work that's going on right now?
We've put ourselves out there on the e-commerce platform, and then there is so much more attention in this platform post-lockdown. It's important that we keep sort of working at it and getting better every day, and keeping that strength that we have harnessed over the last few years. So it's as the expectations rise, you've got to work harder to live up to that expectation. In the early days, I think Gibsons was very lucky because when we started 4 years ago, there wasn't so much of e-commerce, and people in general were probably relatively more forgiving back then because we were the first few, or maybe the only one in the first year. So even if we didn't make it on time or something went wrong, they were like, that's fine, because you're the only one out there, so we'll kind of. But now, rightly so, the expectation is there, and we are constantly evolving and getting better.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're also under the radar constantly, right? Because one mistake, we're like, okay, we have other options as customers right now. But have you also seen a change in the way different shoppers shop in terms of demographic or nationality or gender? And you've probably noticed this over the last few years or the last 4 years that you've gone online.
So from a food perspective, it unites us all. And the fact that we have all these nationalities in the UAE that are happy to experiment with other cuisines all the time. I think the fruits and vegetables is quite a nice stable platform which everybody can pick from, and so for us the data has been quite steady. However, in the last year, what we are trying to do is become a little bit more aware of what are the unique requirements of different demographics, and then try to cater to that. So we are trying to bring in more Arabic vegetables into our play. We're bringing in more Chinese vegetables into our play, and cater to the Asian, which is tricky because the requirements are quite unique across the platform. And now that we want to go above the base, we are trying to do a good job on that.
Right. Okay. So how about age demographics, right? I think that is one major customer behavior that a lot of retailers have seen has been drastically different. So is it the same for what you provide and offer to your customers? Do you see a completely different behavior for Gen X, Y, and Z?
Age is a great example, but also culture. So it's not always a matter of just age, but also culturally people have a specific shopping habit per se, right? They would want to go to a supermarket, or they would want to do things differently, and especially in this part of the world. At Kibsons, I think what we believe in is that our value proposition is convenience.
Right.
And we are here to offer an option to the customer out there. Regardless, it's a matter of time that we see that age or the culture barrier being sort of overcome, and the customers transitioning, and then not necessarily that we are expecting them to always have online shopping. They do go here and there. They like to go to the mall for a stroll and do their shopping physically, which is always going to be part of the scene. So the demographics will change. It's a matter of time. That's what I think personally. If you look at the generations, or you look forward to the upcoming generations, that trend is going to only get more e-commerce savvy per se, isn't it?
Yeah, and we hope so as well. But then, however, a lot of the traditional retailers have said that e-commerce players are at a data advantage because you have so much access to so much of the data, and there's not a separate process that is required to gather the data. Would you agree?
It is interesting, because you from the outside, yes, it looks like, oh, we are sitting on so much buying behavior and pattern. But the thing is, you see, when we are trying to use data to project or to push from a marketing perspective on social media channels, there is a little bit about hitting the right target segment for the right product, right? How much of that actually goes into conversion is another debate. And for different products, there's a different level of acceptance. So in a certain category, maybe 2% is, wow, that's good, or certain category, maybe 8% is good. So that's the part where you don't know how much of that brand being out there and being on top of mind, consumer mind, is actually converting into dollar value.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then the other is that, as consumers, as us being consumers, there's a little bit in, these retail segments to maybe, I think, be more invasive or, and be, know too much about us that we don't want them to know. So where do you draw the line of being pushed into that sales? So I think personally that if the knowledge is done subtly to somehow assist the consumer in making that decision or remind them of something that they have forgotten, that's the fine borderline where you can get the consumer to appreciate and be grateful that, oh my God, I'm thank you very much, I did forget about that.
Yeah.
But that's an art and science that takes a while to develop.
Right. So in the world of e-commerce, do you think that it is easy to fall prey or victim to the algorithm, like you mentioned? And for both customers as well as retailers?
You can feel them because every time I open a cooking video and I spend a little time on it, I know that then a lot more cooking videos come flashing at me, or the targeted algorithm out there. Own conversion is not 100% all the time. I mean, you do see those things, but do you actually buy them just because they were targeted at you?
Yeah, exactly what we were discussing a little bit earlier, right? The hammering concept. If it's not done the right way or subtly, if it's just in your face, you just sort of repel from the idea of buying that brand or being associated with it. So let's talk about what you do with your data. So it's about leveraging all of the data that you've collected, gathered, accumulated. So where exactly do you use it and how do you use it? Is it for buying decisions, price points, and can you take us through the process?
Okay, so it's probably something you may or not expect, but at Kibsons, what we try to do is use the data to continuously improve our processes and our operations. For example, we believe that one of the big points of consumer satisfaction is that you receive all the items that you had ordered when you got onto the Gibsons website.
Right.
So our target to deliver on accuracy in terms of the delivery timing and the number of items that were ordered is about 99% plus. So we leave a margin of only 1% to really maneuver ourselves with. And every morning, shortages is a huge topic at Gibsons, and we spend time to analyze it and get better every day. But to maintain a consistent target of 1% can only be data driven.
Yeah.
Right. So that's an example. The other thing is that at Gibsons, and the industry that we are in being so highly perishable, it is important that we keep our wastages to a low.
Yeah.
So if you can think about it, almost it's like a seesaw where if you order too much, then you are having wastages, and if you order too little, then you have a shortage.
Yeah.
So for us to be able to control our wastages with the intention that lean costing is going to be pushed back to the consumer as a low, competitive value. If that's the motivating factor, then we've got to be very good at that.
Yeah.
So we are constantly using data to do our demand planning and our buying analysis and understanding what price points actually work, like you said, and which don't. So to give you an example, our flowers, our everyday flowers that are between the range of maybe 50 to 80 would be clearly faster selling than those that cross the benchmark of 100, because then it's perceived as a little bit more pricey and it's not an everyday flower. So we still have those options for a smaller volume and a smaller occasion point, but our everyday flower range is obviously below a certain point, and we see that and we respond to that. And data is not just about extracting numbers. I think feedback also comes in qualitative form in through our customers' emails and I don't know, through social media and what have you. And a huge part of Gibsons development has been thanks to all this feedback. That is data. I mean, I often say to the team in-house that we don't, I mean, given the fact that we are a small family business, we don't have the big budgets to get consultancy from big corporates. So this data is free. This feedback is free. So, that drives our product search, our product finalization, and the price points that we believe that will be successful.
Sure. So let me ask you this question that, a lot of retailers have been asking themselves for years. What is the one thing that your customers don't buy from you, a product, and they buy from your competitors instead? I mean, I'm sure you've got a ballpark idea.
I think in the fruits and vegetable range, we offer a very wide variety because we've existed in this segment for nearly 4 decades. So I'd like to believe that with the fruits and vegetables, we are fairly competitive, and if the consumers do go elsewhere, that's because of convenience in another format, right? It may be a grocery or supermarket close to their home, or they're out in the mall and so on, or they just prefer shopping in that fashion. When it comes to non-perishable, we are still in our very early years of trying to figure our way around, and so I think we offer a very small collection of items beyond fruits and vegetables, and so therefore, there are huge gaps. I'm sure our consumers are going elsewhere to satisfy those gaps, and some of them are kind enough to let us know that, look, for these 3 items, I always have to go elsewhere. Can you please bring them on Kibsons?
Yeah, and exactly. And recently you onboarded Sainsbury, which was great. Again, I'm sure there was demand from the market as well. So was that a data-driven decision? Was that something your customers needed? And is that a value proposition that is a tangent that you want to take into?
Absolutely. So you see, our ethos has always been about offering premium quality at an affordable value. And Sainsbury's just couldn't have been more perfectly fitting into that ethos, right? That's what their brand stands for. And the fact that we were able to offer Sainsbury's quality at almost the pricing that is available in the UK was unbelievable. I think we had an overwhelming response from the consumers, which was anticipated by us, knowing that people are now in UAE looking for that value. They do not want to be overly paying for items that they know themselves they can get. They realize that, I guess, when people travel, they realize the difference in value, and they realize that it's not a fair deal.
Right.
So I think, Sainsbury's was very, very well received, and we are very proud to have had that opportunity and be the ones to offer that to our consumers.
Yeah, and congratulations for bringing that brand to this region as well. That's great news. But however, in terms of risk, right? Obviously, the industry you're in, it's a low margin industry. The turnover is super quick. Supply chain is paramount, and last year we saw supply chain challenges were massive. So in terms of risk, would you say it is a difficult industry to be in and a difficult business to start?
100%. 100%. Anyone listening to this interview from the fruit and vegetable industry just couldn't agree more. Honestly, they'll be all smiling right now. And probably I would say that on one hand, it's a barrier to entry, isn't it? Because the financial math doesn't really work out. I mean, in my early years, my background is finance. And so I used to think, gosh, the ROI numbers just don't make sense. I'd rather take my money and go elsewhere. And there are so many other better, businesses. But I can tell you one thing, the boys in this industry, and this is across the market, are in it because they are just genuinely passionate about it. Passionate about it in the way that I can't even describe. They genuinely understand what they are doing. They love what they do. They have accumulated this expertise and knowledge over years that I have just come to kind of appreciate and realize in my recent because my background with Gibsons has always been into finance and operations. I was involved into setting up processes and structures, and And I did that as a response to their passion to be transparent and honest to farmers across the world, right? Because we procure from farms, and they had this passion that we really want our farmers to get that right information at the right time and so on. We didn't know that we were going to stumble across e-commerce, which became a fantastic thing eventually, because we had the systems in place to be able to rock a business like e-commerce. But yeah, so it's over the last 4 years, it's been sort of a culmination of years of experience and expertise into the fruit and vegetable segment, so food per se, and our ERP systems and our strong foundation on structures, and which became the base on which we could set up the e-commerce. And I think during the lockdown period, how we responded said a little bit about how good our foundations have been.
Yeah, and the reason I asked you this is, especially last year, we saw a lot of people saying supermarkets have had it easy, grocery retailers are making a lot of money, they're essentials and all of that, but there's so much back-end trouble that you go through, and it's not just from last year, it's just the nature of the business is such, and that's why I thought it was important for you to address that, you know.
Thank you. I don't think a lot of people understand the fact that we run on very thin margins. This is not an industry where you make a lot of money. It's an industry where you're just hopeful with maybe a 1% net at the end of the day when you go home. So it's a volume-based industry where you are very selfless, humble. And if you don't believe that, you've got to take the car and drive into the fruit and veg market literally to see how humble that place is, you know, how down to earth it is. And we are, there's a bunch of genuine people out there who, like I said before, love what they do. And with respect to Kibsons, I think we are fighting for that value to the consumer more than anything. Our team knows that, you know, so if you were to interview people in our team, they would tell you the same thing, that there's no pressure on how much margin you can make on a certain product. On the contrary, it's about, are the consumers going to get a fantastic value out of it, right? And then we take that pressure inwards in making sure our operational processes are very lean, the cost is very much reduced to a point where we can survive that. Yeah. And so we are satisfied with little margins. And I would also like to add that during the lockdown period, what actually happened is that we had to make a very bold decision, in the sense that we couldn't see the future at that point into how long the lockdown would, you know, go on. So in order to make sure that food security was not an issue, I think the management took a decision on holding on that much stock. Holding on that much stock with keeping the prices stable. Now, we could have, in the name of lockdown, increased our prices, but our consumers would have noticed that we didn't do that. So it was not about us taking advantage of a situation, right? If you're the only service in town that is, even after 7 days, but still delivering on time, we never took advantage in terms of pricing. So our pricing remained stable, even though our international procurement pricing went up. Right? So we took that hit internally. That's number one. And number two is that when the lockdown ended, right, we didn't see that level of demand consistently for those specific products, but we had the stock. So we had to take a hit on that excess stock, if you can imagine that. And those are behind the scene challenges, like you said, that people don't, of course, the demand, like we were discussing earlier, we are consistent overall. But during that phase, when there was a drop, even 2 weeks worth of non-consistent level of sale will hit us. Because the items are perishable.
Correct. Yeah, that's why I wanted to know about the peaks and troughs, because again, one thing we saw during the lockdown period or in the last year is every single retailer moved online. They had an e-commerce arm, they had an e-commerce platform. Even Spinneys that hadn't even thought of, you know, going online, they went online last year in 2020. So we've seen that happen. So and the whole idea behind this is to be where the customer is, and that's what omni-channel ideally is, right? It's beyond the buzzword of click and collect or, you know, all of those services. It's about being where the customer is, and if the customer wants to be on WhatsApp, you need to be on WhatsApp. If they want to be in a physical retail shop, you need to be there. In a mall, in a hotel, you need to be there. So Halima, are you going to be physically present, and not you, obviously Kibsons, are you going to have a physical presence at some point? Because I know as a consumer and as a customer, I love what Kibsons has to offer, but my behavior as a customer is that of a baby boomer. I want to touch and feel my tomatoes, my onions, all of that, and I need to. So which is why I've actually gone back to the Lulus and Carrefours of the world after the lockdown period. So
It's a tricky one. We did actually have an opportunity where one of the malls in Abu Dhabi, the director there was a passionate fan of Kibsons, and he actually approached us to say that, I'd really like to have a supermarket in the mall, and I would like it to be nothing but Kibsons. So it was very honoring and flattering, and did actually provoke some conversations within the team. It's not that we wouldn't want to have a presence in physically, but given the fact that we are a small team internally, being a family business, it's about what are our strategies, what are our priorities, and how do we want to focus and channel our limited energy.
yeah.
Besides costings, I mean, we are very lean in the business model of how we do things. Will a physical presence be that cost effective? So these are the kind of question marks we have in mind, and yeah, we're still sitting on the fence.
But it just doesn't have to be a retail outlet, right? It can be a pop-up, it can be presence at, or a temporary presence, a temporary physical presence. Is that something you're already doing?
We do have a physical presence in the fruit and vegetable market in block number 2. We have a shop number 59, and mums and kiddos love to come there sometimes after school. We see them in uniforms and they do the shopping and they go through that wholesale market experience, which is perfect and apt for us because that's where we originated and we grew. So that's our history, our culture, as in Kibsons culture. What we also realize is that the sharp contrast between the number of SKUs we are able to offer in that space versus the SKUs that we offer online. So it's tricky. I mean, to be able to provide that full range of offering and where we are going. Not really sure whether that's our area of expertise or that's our core competitive strength.
Right, but in terms of costs, you're obviously managing the warehouse and the fulfillment centers on one hand, which is again a tricky task and it is very, very difficult. And on the other hand, if you have somebody else doing it for you, or if you're set up in a separate space, and I'm not pushing you for it, I'm just trying to understand, in terms of cost. What do you think is more expensive for somebody who has to enter the field right now?
In setting up
either an e-commerce platform with a fully managed warehouse and fulfillment center, and on the other hand, a retail store.
So fulfillment centers are quite common in the UAE. They're not unique as such, right? I mean, there is a cost involved and there's a certain investment that you can calculate around. I think in our case, our point of difference is the fact that our products require cold chain management. So it's just not a fulfillment center, it is a fulfillment center that demands a specific level of cold chain management, right? And we've got multiple temperatures, we've got sensitivities around that, and to manage that is the heart of the game. And also then to manage the logistics around these very highly perishable products, because you've got fresh products coming in by air thrice a week, you've got multiple continents, and then you've got your sea containers coming through, and how we handle that stuff, how we provide a home, because again, if you think of nature, nothing is perfect, right? So all these fruits and vegetables that we have layers of classes into it, like you've got a class 1, 2 and 3. So to be able to channel that home, so there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we make perhaps look very simple when you place the order, and that's the whole point, right? Our whole value proposition is convenience. People come to us when, and especially going forward, time is becoming such an expensive and precious thing. We are time poor on everything. So the one thing you can give one another as a great gift is time. The one thing that you want to preserve is time. So in that space, what we are trying to build is convenience. And so we don't often discuss all this complication that we endure behind the scenes. And I think we've become better at over the years. What we want our customers to see is simple. Here's the app. This is how quickly and easily you find the products, and this is how easily we're going to deliver. But there is a lot of science behind it.
Exactly, and there's a lot of science behind it, there's a lot of data involved behind it, and there's also a lot of effort that goes into it, which is why I also wanted to have this conversation with you, because it does look very easy and simple when you're just clicking on things on your phone, but then there's so much behind it. And thank you for sharing that with us today, and thank you for educating us more about this entire e-commerce space that you've taken over and flourished just in the last 4 years, like you've mentioned. Great. Thanks again for joining us here on Up to Date, and thank you to all the viewers who've tuned in once again today. We are at the London Project and we'll be back again next week with another session. So don't forget to download the Retail ME app. Bye.